this is really such an important attribute because many of us feel that our lives are becoming increasingly busy and overloaded. How many times do you find yourself saying something along the lines of, I'm too tired, too busy, too stressed out, I need a holiday, I've got too much going on, or I haven't got the time to get everything that I want done. If life seems like a rush all of the time with little or no relief in between, then you're not alone. Let's face it, as a society, we're completely and utterly overloaded. Virtually all of us would love to have even a day off work and off from the world in just the next week, just to catch up on sleep and relax. But only if we had the time. It's the same reason why most of us speed. We all know the speed limits, but that doesn't mean that we pay attention to them. We sit in the fast lane because our lives are running at 200 kilometers an hour, but the speed limit is only 100 kilometers an hour. We are all in a rush, but to go where? We have fast food, fast mail, fast travel. Everything is getting faster and more hectic, and there just doesn't seem to be enough time in the day. Once upon a time, the only people on call were those in the emergency services, and they had rotating rosters. Now we live in a 24/7, 365 day per year work time, always on call, never really able to switch off. And this is not just at work either, as the boundaries between work and home life continue to fade. It used to be that work ended for most people when they clocked off. But now technology means that we are always connected to the office. And so we now bring our work home if we are not already working from home, and even to bed with us in the shape of smartphones, laptops, etc. We even have alarm clocks that will read us our emails upon waking. So work continues to preoccupy our minds even when we are away from it, as the notion of a healthy work-life balance is pretty much non-existent for most people. And it's not only us as individuals who are feeling it, but also our families. Many parents are caught up with the dual demands of looking after young children as well as their elderly parents, and in most cases working as well. Friendships are becoming increasingly harder to maintain, particularly once you've had a family. This is a big reason why we have social networking programs which allow us to keep in contact with our friends and family online, because we haven't got the time to see them all often enough in real life. And if we don't have time for family or friends or other important commitments, then where does this really leave us? Well, you become like a hamster on a wheel. The faster the wheel goes, the faster you go, until you completely wear yourself out and not only become exhausted, but also often very unhealthy too. That is, the busier and more overloaded our lives become, the harder it becomes for us to achieve well-being. And this is profoundly evident in the explosion of lifestyle-related diseases, both in our physical health, including an increased prevalence of things such as cancer and obesity, as well as in our mental health as well, including an increased prevalence of things such as anxiety and depression. All of which have increased exponentially as our lives have become busier and we become more time poor. And this is something that I know firsthand and all too well. And I can say this because I've spent most of my life coaching countless people trying to undo what is often a lifetime of self-neglect and not looking after themselves as they should. And when I sit these people down and ask them why they haven't done so, the number one reason or excuse that I most often hear is always the same: a lack of time. And even more so than motivation or any other factor. And whilst it's never too late to make positive changes in life, it is certainly harder to undo the damage that a lifetime of neglect has had on their health and well-being. That's for sure. And so it seems that the busier our lives become, the less time we have to engage in all of the positive lifestyle behaviors required to achieve balance and live a healthier and happier life. Namely, all of the things contained in the what you chew component, such as eating mindfully and intuitively and choosing whole foods over processed foods and looking after our gut, as well as all of the things contained in the what you do component, such as doing regular exercise, getting quality sleep, and meditating. In fact, the vast majority of people I coach are either not doing these essential lifestyle behaviors to a sufficient level, or even if at all, which clearly explains why they are merely surviving instead of thriving as they should. That is, we are not doing all of the things required to achieve and maintain balance. And probably the most obvious physical representation that our lives are completely out of balance would have to be excess weight. The fact that almost 2 billion people who, despite their best intentions and notable efforts, have struggled to maintain a healthy weight in today's hectic and increasingly time-poor world. A world in which our bodies and minds and emotions just aren't keeping up. A world where many of us wake up in the morning feeling just as exhausted as when we went to bed. A world which is a far cry from when I grew up and actually had time to be bored. A world where many of us feel as if we have no time to do the things we want and need to do, and as a result often feel frustrated as we don't believe we have the power to change things. Of course, most of us still blame ourselves as we tell ourselves that we aren't coping, that we have poor time management skills, and therefore if we are incompetent, it's pretty much our fault. And so what I want to say is that the most precious thing that we have in this life is time. It's a finite resource that we can't get back. It's the only thing we ever really have, because life is short, as we are all going to die, which is why every second of each minute, every minute of each hour, every hour of each day, every day of each week, every week of each month, and every month of each year is absolutely precious. And so we need to make every moment of it count. And this is why I'm so passionate about helping you to live your healthiest and happiest life, because I actually understand just how precious life is. And as such, I want to ensure that you have the time and energy in your life to increase both the quality of life and the longevity of life by creating the space to watch what you chew and do what you need to do, and in many respects, always live true. In other words, to manage your time effectively and in a way which allows for wellness. Because if you don't do that, then you'll soon have to make time for illness, as the majority of society does. Okay, so now that you know why managing your time is important, I just want to talk about a few of the ways of how best to go about doing so. And the first tip I want to give you is to stop trading your time for money. If there is one thing that drains all of our time, more so than anything else, it's our work. Just think about it. Most of our time is spent working and sleeping. And in life, we take the average of 9 hours of work and 9 hours of sleep. That only leaves us 6 hours to do everything else in a day. Things like cooking and eating and, all the household chores, running errands, tending to hygiene, looking after your kids if you have kids, spending time with and helping out with your family and everything else that we've got to do. And so at the end of the day, assuming that you are working, then most of us are lucky if we are left with an hour per day completely to ourselves. That being the case, it's no wonder then why so many of us struggle to get work-life balance right. And so this is the first thing we need to ensure that we address if we want to better manage our time. Sure, it would be great if we could all just stop working. It would have all the time in the world to do everything that we both want and should be doing. But unfortunately, money makes the world go round. And it's one thing that is essential to our very survival. We need it. The question then becomes, how can we approach work in a way that doesn't drain so much of our precious, precious time? And so that we actually have the time to do the things we want and should be doing. Well, it's quite simple, really. We need to ensure that we work smarter, not harder. Now, there are lots of ways to do this. Just ask any consultant or read any number of books regarding modern time management processes, and you'll find lots of different tips, tricks, and techniques on how to get more things done, to do things faster, to be more productive and more efficient, and to generally work better. But there is one thing that's absolutely essential to do above all else if we are to better manage our time and achieve work-life balance. And that is to stop trading your time for money. What do I mean by this? Well, most of us only get paid when we work. That is, we work for an hourly rate or contracted rate, and then we get paid. And when we don't work, we don't get paid. And so the problem with trading your time for money is that no matter how much your time is worth to your organization, it could be $20, $30, $50, $80 an hour, whatever it is, there will always be a cap imposed here. And that cap is time. And so what often happens is that we end up just working longer hours or even doing overtime in order to try and get ahead. But there is only so much time we can work before our work-life balance is completely thrown out of whack and our health and well-being really begin to suffer. Sure, we can ask for a promotion, but we might have to wait years before we get it, if at all. But when you stop trading time for money, you can work less and earn the same and even more. So how do we do this? Well, the first step involves dropping the mindset that says that in order to make money, we have to trade our time for it. Because there's no rule that says that to make X amount of dollars, we have to work X amount of hours. The key is to instead think about trading value for money, not time. That is, think about what value you can create for other people and how you can deliver that value. What assets, what skills, what knowledge, connections or ideas do you have that people value? Recognize your strengths and competency, then go all in. I once heard Warren Buffett say, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, then you'll work until the day you die. And you know what? He's dead right. The best way to stop trading time for money and remaining a slave to the 9-to-5 system is to create an offer that you can sell and deliver without having to be there. A powerful way to do this is to create an online product, an ebook, a training program, a membership program, software apps, or whatever else. You can also sell physical products online, but you'll have to find someone who can manufacture and deliver the product to your customers through things like drop shipping, etc. The reason why an online product can be powerful is that you can create it once, then focus the rest of your time just on selling it. Yeah, sure, you'll have to improve and optimize the product, but those tasks will happen on your own time. This means that you could go on vacation, spend time with your family or friends, exercise, sleep, and still have the ability to benefit as customers purchase your offerings. So as you hear this, just start thinking about what ways you can start trading value for money in your own life. And in doing so, how this could positively enhance your ability to manage your time. Obviously, if you enjoy working for someone else, then it's a little harder to not trade your time for money. But once again, you can still focus on trading value for money. And you can do this by simply becoming more skillful at what you do. I say that because by increasing your skills and becoming better at what you do, you can earn more per hour and work less. Either way, what is clear is that you become financially stable. If you've been lucky and even smart enough to invest your money in a way that provides you with a passive income, such as in real estate shares or anything else, then this will also enable you to reduce the amount of hours that you trade time for money and escape the 9-to-5 grind. And you can learn more about achieving financial freedom in the Living True in Finances attribute, so be sure to check that out. Okay, so my next tip for managing your time effectively is to set up what I call your non-negotiables. As I've spoken about, most of us live busy lives these days, and that's okay, just as long as you don't let busyness become an excuse for not having the time to look after your health and well-being, which is what I'm most passionate about. And a great way to do this is to create some non-negotiables. These are things which you must do, in other words, your top priorities, regardless of whatever else is going on in your day or in your life. And I'll give you some examples. Some of your non-negotiables could include things like doing half an hour of exercise per day, or allowing a 1 hour block for cooking and enjoying a meal, blocking off 8 hours for sleep time, 1.5 hours for undivided attention with your kids if you have kids, or maybe half an hour for relax and unwind time. Then, and only then, in the hours you have left in between these activities, you do the other things that you need to do, which might include going to work, helping others, or anything else. And that's often a lot. In other words, make the time for the things that are essential to your health and well-being first, before you do anything else. If you're not sure what your non-negotiables should be, then start with any of the attributes of what you choose and do, because they are all essential to living a more balanced life. Once you figure these out, then literally block out time on your calendar to do them. So my next tip for time management also ties into the previous tip, and that is to get really good at saying no. And this is important because being busy is different to being overcommitted and not having the time to do the things that you want and need to be doing, which is what happens when you cannot say no. In fact, if there's one trait that all really successful people have in common, it's that they are all good at saying no. And this is because they understand that time is a finite resource, meaning that you really only have so much of it. That is, it's important to understand that every time you say yes to something, you're effectively saying no to something else. For example, when you say yes to working overtime, then you may be saying no to cooking dinner, no to going to the gym, no to spending time with your kids, or anything else. In other words, everything is a trade-off. And it's okay to do this just as long as your life is in balance. If not, then you need to get really good at saying no, which in the beginning can be much more difficult than saying yes. And this is because while trying not to care what other people think of us, we all want to be liked at the end of the day. And by saying no, we think we are being selfish, but even worse, other people might think that we are being selfish. So how do we get good at saying no? Well, first, you must have a go-to response when people ask you for favors which take up your time. Something simple like, sorry, that doesn't work for me at this time, is sufficient. Saying no is also much easier to do when you reconnect with and are clear about your priorities. Otherwise, your reasons for saying no might seem unimportant and it just becomes easier to say yes. It's also important to tell the truth too. Untrue excuses lead to further entanglements and greater stress. And lying sends your unconscious the message that there's something wrong with saying no, which is untrue. Once you've made your decision, then stick to it instead of letting yourself being talked out of it. Do this by focusing on the good things that will come from saying no and not the regret or guilt you might feel from saying yes when you really didn't want to. So just remember, saying yes when we want to really say no tends to bite us later, especially in the form of having no time for ourselves and feeling guilty, resentment, and exhaustion. The final tip that I want to touch on when it comes to managing your time effectively is meal prep. For those of you who don't know, meal prep is simply the concept of preparing whole meals or even components of meals ahead of schedule. Meal prepping is really important because given the busyness of life today, so many of us seem to struggle to find the time, let alone the energy, to prepare and eat a healthy meal 3 times a day, every day of the week. And you know what? I don't blame you, especially if you work full time and have a family to cook for too. It can be really, really hard. That's because working out what we eat can waste so much of our precious time if we are not organized. However, by preparing meals in advance, we can avoid this constant struggle and eat healthier meals more consistently. This is important because a lack of time is often the biggest barrier when it comes to preparing healthy meals. And although you do need to invest some time up front to plan out your meals properly and to cook them, you'll still end up saving so much time overall. Just think about how much time you waste standing in front of the refrigerator, trying to figure out what to cook. Once your meals are prepared ahead of time, all you need to do is take them out of the fridge or freezer and heat them up, and you're done. It's also going to save you time with the grocery shopping as well. And that's because once you know what meals you'll be, eating for the week, then you won't find yourself wandering aimlessly around the aisles, wondering what you need to buy. And so to find out exactly how to prep your meals in advance, be sure to do the plan and prepare meals in advance attribute, which you can find in the what you chew component. Look, at the end of the day, there are lots of ways that we can better manage our time. I have covered some of the most important concepts, but I just want to finish by saying that time management is not just about you. It's about all of us as a society. That is, the way you manage your time has huge consequences for your family, friends, work colleagues, and the world at large in a myriad of ways. For example, what do people say when they get gravely ill? I didn't have the time to look after myself. Or when they didn't vote, oh, I didn't have the time. Or when they don't stand up for what's right in the world, oh, I didn't have time. I think you get the idea of what I'm talking about here. So, do you manage your time effectively? Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to learn more about the other essential attributes of staying in your best shape. And until next time, watch what you chew, do what you need to do, and always live true.